I mean, that's what they call themselves. So actually, they're well to the left even of socialists, of European-style socialists. Anyway, the Midwest Academy, she put him on the Voter Project, which is an arm of ACORN, and ACORN is totally integrated here with the Midwest Academy. Then he was put on the Woods Fund, which was a traditional conservative foundation, which was taken over by a leftist staffer and split in two. And who did he serve on the Woods Fund with but the Billy Ayers, a lifelong America hater, a terrorist, unrepentant. But basic to Billy Ayers is his absolute hatred for America. And he, of course, and Obama were that close for 20 years. Obama, of course, the most unvetted figure in American public life. But they were sat on the Woods board together. Obama was then put on the Joyce Foundation, which is $1 billion. This is how his credibility was built. He was trained. The Ayers-Obama partnership went into the Annenberg Fund, the Annenberg Challenge, which was something devised by Bill Ayers, in which they got $50 million from the Annenberg Foundation. This is how out to lunch conservatives are, because Walter Annenberg was a conservative who gave $900 million to the left. That's basically what Walter Annenberg did through his foundation giving. Anyway, the Annenberg Challenge was a challenge from the Annenberg Foundation to do a reform in inner city schools. The reform that the Ayers did was to bring in radicals to indoctrinate K-12 students. But he never would have got the challenge money if he hadn't been supported by MacArthur and these other foundations. So his whole career, right up to running for president, because where did the ground force for Obama's candidacies come from in those primaries to beat Hillary Clinton? It came from ACORN and the SEIU, which is a far-left government union run by Andy Stern. They gave $60 million to the Obama campaign. The unions, generally, those unions gave $400 million. Not to mention 100,000 campaign workers. So this is basically what we're facing. Now, what's wrong with these foundations? I mean, you know, first of all, of course, since the Horowitz Freedom Center is also part of this universe, although greatly outnumbered and greatly outspent, like all conservative foundations. There's something a little different in, like, the Horowitz Freedom Center has 100,000 individual donors and supporters. So we have a constituency, and we represent, in a way, that constituency. The Ford Foundation has no constituency, has no shareholders. It's just a board that was created one way or another to have a particular political profile, which doesn't at all reflect the views of its founders or the money that made it. And it exists in perpetuity, and it's answerable to no one, absolutely no one. Corporations have customers. They have shareholders. They also have customers. They've got a lot of people that they have to please. Ford Foundation doesn't have to please anybody. And the one limit to this is if you do something as stupid as they did, which was to fund a terrorist organization in the Middle East and you know, get the Jews upset, because Jews are a powerful constituency. That's too big an embarrassment, particularly when you're located in New York. So the Ford Foundation just cleaned up that little mess. But that's it. I'm sure if they offended you know, blacks, they'd have a similar problem that way. But when they're operating as they do below the radar, I mean, people in this audience are well informed. I think I probably told you some things you didn't know. If you read this book, you'll find out a lot more things that you didn't know. I myself was horrified when we put up, and actually the origins of the new Leviathan, are a website we've created called discoverthenetworks.org, which is an encyclopedia of the left. And when my researcher, Mike Bauer, did the funders section of our website, I looked and I said, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, I mean, these are government institutions. They're funding the left. And then you look and see what they're funding, and they're funding radicals, radical antagonists to our system. This is not democracy anymore. This is a huge threat to democracy. And I'm hoping, and there is a solution, or there are many solutions, obviously, but all these foundations exist under the tax code. The tax code says, why are they all getting tax exemption? Because they're promoting the general welfare. Well, look, that's the definition. I mean, it's in so many words. You promote the tax code says you can't do this if you're supporting a political candidate. That's how they define politics. Support of a candidate, support of a political party. That's partisan. That's not the general welfare. Well, come on. You're supporting cap and trade. You're supporting open borders. You're supporting socialized medicine. That's political. That's what our politics is about. So the IRS could just redefine what's political and what's charitable. We know what's charitable. A hospital is charitable because it serves everybody. Education is going to be tricky because, as I say, I mean, the Ford Foundation's education dollars went into creating an ideology, multiculturalism, and institutionalizing it. But, you know, they put up money, I mean, for programs that propagandized, or the programs that implemented a specific curriculum, which is, I'll do it crassly, a hate America curriculum, a curriculum that says America is a sexist, racist, imperialist, classist country. So education is a tricky one. Another way, and I think this is advisable, is to sunset these foundations within, say, 10 years of their retirement of their founders. If the founder leaves the board, or if when Henry Ford leaves the board, it shouldn't exist after that. Of course, conservatives are always trying to do the right thing. I call them gold star conservatives. They get a gold star. So there used to be 3 big conservative foundations that were boogeymen for the leftists, and one of them was the Olin Foundation, and Olin sunsetted itself. It did the right thing. I don't know of any left-wing foundation that's done the right thing. I want to finish this by, I've given it out, everybody, there's this government versus the people. Where does this money go that's supposed to go for the poor? What do these government programs do, actually? When Republicans are put against the wall by leftists, people on the left, they say, you're selfish. Republicans will say, this government program is wasteful, we're wasting a lot of money in the public schools, we're wasting, Obamacare is incredibly wasteful. All this money that's spent on these green industries is down the sewer, just gone, which is all true. But we're always subject to the attack that we're selfish. Leftists always have a victims. You don't care about poor people. You don't care about black people. Well, Republicans care. There's one constituency Republicans have, which is taxpayers. But the argument against that is, look, okay, this was a wasteful program. But look, it was for such a good cause. Shouldn't we take the risk of spending a little extra money even if it's wasted on such a good cause? Well, what conservatives need to do is to point out how government destroys poor people, how it destroys black people, how it destroys minorities generally when it gets into action. I will give you just one example, which is very current, which is the subprime mortgage crisis. For 10 years, the Democrats, led by Bill Clinton, but especially by Acorn and Obama, said everybody should own a house, even if you can't afford it. I mean, they didn't put in that last thing, but everybody needs to own a house. That's the American dream. And so they pressured, this is such an old term, mau-mau'd. They actually got on buses and hounded bank presidents in Chicago. That's what Obama's organization did. Until they agreed, and it came under enormous pressure from the Clinton administration, to remove all the rules for lending, all that had been built up, all the lending procedures had been built up over generations as what's prudent, who do you lend to? And that created this massive housing crisis, which is at the bottom of, was a step in creating the financial crisis. The financial crisis came about for other reasons as well, but one of them was that these banks bundled mortgages which people held, mortgages which people were paying into who couldn't afford it. Okay, who are the victims here? It's not just the taxpayers. This is not just about government waste. The first line of victims are all the poor people, black and Hispanic, and also white, who were snookered by progressives into buying homes they couldn't afford and lost them. How traumatic is that? To be told you're going to have your dream and then have it taken away within a couple of years, actually. That is an atrocity that progressives committed through government programs against poor people, against black people. An even bigger hit that the black community and also the Hispanic community took, but the black community in particular, was what's happened to house values. One of the great stories of the last 50 years is the rise of the black middle class. Of course, untold in our culture. Untold in our culture. In 1939, 4% of the black, of African Americans were professionals in the middle class. 4%. Now it's over 50%. What a story. However, if you are on the rise, if you are just climbing out of poverty or even out of the middle class, what's your main investment? It's your house. The Clinton-Obama-inspired housing crisis took 54% of the net worth of black middle-class Americans away from them, destroyed it. Destroyed it. $100 billion that black Americans had, that African Americans had, was destroyed by Clinton and Obama and Acorn and these progressives. That's why this new Leviathan, this massive, and of course they were 100% behind this idea that everybody should own a home, even if you can't afford it, are responsible for. That's why it's such a threat. It's a permanent juggernaut. It exists within and between elections, and it shapes the entire national debate and, of course, the media environment. Because one thing you learn about journalists is that they're lazy. And this will get me a lot of good press, but well, you could look at it and say they're just pressed for time. So they get fed. They get fed by this secondary universe of the 501c3 battalions. And of course, and there are just sleaze operations and smear operations like Media Matters which has an $8.5 million budget that got from Soros and the Clintons, to smear